Bear with. Bear with.
You know, it's important to remember, boys and girls, that in life we never stop learning. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more, but not typically like we do. As always, I am Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast. But on this episode, it's a little bit more celluloid management oversight, where we sit down with industry professionals and we take a look at films that may have fallen through the cracks for them, films that they haven't seen before, and talk about it and dissect them and sort of define their importance in the business in sort of the canon of cinema, as it were. And we're looking at a wide sort of swath of films. And before we tell you what film we're talking about today, just please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. You're listening, so you may have already done that. But you can find us at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google. Give us that 5-star rating and a subscribe. But also, we archive all of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would really appreciate it. Also, you can find us on social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at In the Seats, or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. But importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, where we talk the moving image in general, because that's what gets us going. That's what we love to do, and we love it when you come by and listen and read about it. So please stop on by. But for this episode, we're looking at a really unique film. It's Paul Bartel's Eating Raoul, and it's a gloriously bent film, and it's one of those ones that I'd always heard rumblings about as well from people that I know and people around the industry. It's always one of those movies that, oh, have you seen such and such? Oh, you got to catch up with that. It's hilarious, and it is streaming on the Criterion Channel right now. But we had the chance to sit down and talk with a festival director and programmer over at the Saskatoon Fantastic Film Festival and the upcoming rebirth of the Dark Bridges Film Festival, Mr. John Allison, who is going through his own personal Criterion challenge as we speak right now. And we really dove into this one, and we had a good time doing it. So enjoy our talk, and if you enjoyed our talk, sign up for the Criterion Channel and go watch Eating Raoul, because you will not be disappointed.
In this business, as we're all sitting around watching movies, it's one of those things where people assume that, I'm not going to complain because we're watching movies for a living. It's not that bad of a job. But the reality is we're all fans, and none of us really can get to everything as much as we may want to at any given time. And that's the whole purpose of what we're doing here today, as with a little bit of celluloid management oversight. We are talking with various industry professionals, and we're finding out about those movies that may have fallen through the cracks that maybe you can catch up on, because everyone's got a different story. Everyone's got a different movie. And, we're going to talk with a real interesting guy today to hear his story and his movie. We're talking with Mr. John Allison. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on. This is a blast. I'm kind of glad we're knocking this one off, because it's been one I meant to see forever, and I just never got around to it.
And you know what? I will be perfectly honest with you, full disclosure. Until today, I had never seen it either. Like, this was a virgin viewing for me as well. But we are going back to 1982, and we are looking at Paul Bartel's Eating Raoul, which, it's one of those movies that's kind of defies explanation, but I'll give it a try. It is bawdy, it is gleeful, it is amoral, it is excess to the nth degree. It's the story of Warhol superstar Mary Woronov and Paul himself, who star as a prudish married couple, but they feel put upon and put out by the swingers who live in their building down the hall from them. And it's just, they hate it. They're freaking out. But one night, by accident, they discover a way to rid themselves of these perverts, but also find a way to get the money they need to open their dream restaurant. And let's just say the violence and the hilarity keeps going from there. It really is sort of an anything goes kind of sick fuck of a movie that, let's just say it. This movie could not have been made today. It is excessive. It is extreme. It is pure 80s.
You have to also add in, it is also cartoony and tame at the same time.
Exactly. No, exactly. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. It's one of those films that I've heard about for years, but again, it's just one of those things where nobody can ever really sort of do it justice. And I mean, I think you and I are going to try to do the impossible feat tonight by trying to explain about it and do it justice. But I guess my first question for you is like, why particularly was this one of those ones that fell through the crack? Because after we all see it, we're like, how did it take me this long to see it?
Really, the more I watch, the more I know I haven't seen. It really comes down to that. And it's really all it's been is just that name's been there. And I'm like, okay, there's this movie called Eating Raoul. I know nothing about it. I didn't even know it's like, I didn't know Paul Bartel is the director for Death Race 2000, like that. I didn't know anything at all in that. And so for me, what this really came out was when I saw you were doing this, I'm like, oh, hey, dude, I'm doing the 2022 Criterion Challenge. Here's my list, and this one's on it. And here you picked, like, yeah, this would be a cool one to do just because I do so much genre stuff and everything. So yeah, it's like I had no idea. I'm terrible. I get so focused on what's coming out now that I don't pay attention to what was out back. And so I've been working hard lately to kind of go back when I have free time in between running my festival to actually, I'm going to go focus on some old stuff and everything. So,
and I mean, it's one of those things where it really feels like it's an encapsulation of the 80s in many ways. It's it's the sex jokes, it's the dick and fart jokes, it's subversive, but it's comedic. I mean, there's sweetness, but like you say, there's real tameness to it at the same time. It's such a weird mix.
So this is the part that really confuses me about this movie. I'm watching it, and like you said, this movie probably wouldn't be made now. The attempted sex scenes are basically rape scenes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, man, okay, this is just way like, and like now doing a rape movie where it is a satire and that it'd be very hard, I think. And that you would have so many people up in arms where if you do something like violation or something like that, where it isn't, where it's like, no, this is something serious. And it's like, what's the impact? What's that? But this is just a takedown of consumerism. It's a takedown of capitalism. It's a takedown of that whole swinger scene. It's a takedown of the 50s attitude on sex and being prudish and that like it merges all these things together. It's interesting. I'm really trying to wrap my head around how much is there of just dealing with racism and stuff like that. I don't think that's in there too much, but you're dealing with Raoul, who is a Chicano, and it's like, oh, so like, well, there has to be like, okay, yeah, he's a criminal. So but everything is taken to this like 10th degree, like way up in the air of like how prudish they are, how sexual the swingers are, how sexy and cool and this criminal guy is and everything. It's all just ramped up so high in that. And then it's like, because the violence is so cartoony, it's so light. I was watching a interview with Paul, and he was talking about he didn't want to offend anyone. And I'm like, I'm like, do you know what the rest of your movie is doing? And but it doesn't like within a minute or two, I'm like, oh, I'm past what they're doing and the swingers and how bad they actually are. But they also do cut back a bit later on it. So,
I mean, this almost feels like an exercise in not offending anybody by offending everybody.
Yeah. And and I just love like how they seem like such nice people, but they are so terrible because not because of the killing, but also just the way they are, their relationship, and it's how like it's so prudish, it's so, and you can see like when the first swinger comes in, she's almost reacting she's reacting off a bat to the sexuality of the swinger guy, the guy coming in, and that, but then as soon as he's gone, they're back like, nope, no, there's no sex, there's no like, and they're like, they don't kiss, they're in separate beds, all that kind of stuff and everything. And then once they do start doing these murders and that like looping indoors, the dominatrix and everything, and it's like, oh yeah, everything's just fine, it's just natural. And I think that's all stuff to do with the whole like just like what normal people are put into, and that like what capitalism does, what consumerism does. And it's just like, no, we want this thing, and hey, we're gonna get it somehow, and that, and we're gonna be, but it's normal. And so it's so sanitized, and you feel like they're achieving their goals in a really nasty way, but it's a sanitized way. And I have a feeling that's what most people actually do.
No, and I mean, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And I mean, I think that's what makes this film so important and so relevant. I mean, it's like on paper, this should not be a part of the Criterion collection or be available to screen on Criterion, but it is.
Yeah.
Because it's commentary on like the social norms that were coming in of nothing exceeds like excess. It was Wall Street before Wall Street almost. Like this really is sort of on one end a tent pole of, okay, hippies and freaks and weirdos, the sexual revolution is over, the hippies are dead. It's today where we're going to do what we want when we want, regardless of the consequences. It's such a bleak commentary on humanity, but it's accurate and hilarious all at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so much of that comes through with Robert Beltran as Raoul, because I mean, I had forgotten that he was in this movie at all. And I mean,
I'm halfway through the movie. I'm like, that's Chakotay from Star Trek.
Exactly.
And I'm like, it did not. I was like, wait, I'm like, I know him. I like, who is this? And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, oh man, okay, that's who it is. But yeah, like his character, like he really, I think, like he brings really brings the movie together. Like they're great by themselves. They're the relationship between them, the chemistry between Mary and Paul, and that in real life, and just how they got along and all that. I think it really plays well in that. But then you put in Raoul in the middle, and except for I'm not a huge fan of where it does turn into Raoul and Paul basically following each other, doing spy versus spy, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It kind of loses a little bit in there. I think it's amusing as hell, him riding on top of the van, and that and everything. But it's still kind of like, okay. But when he's with Mary, when Raoul's with Mary, and that, and then the fact that how much that drives Mary and Paul, and everything. I like it. I think it's really cool.
And I mean, it's amazing to watch because I mean, this very tight-laced button-up couple ends up getting into this sex scheme to try to rob perverts and rid the world of perverts so they can have their dream restaurant, but they're murdering everyone. And I mean, the first two times they're stuffing guys down the trash compactor before they end up meeting Raoul.
Well, it's so clean. Like that's the thing about it. Like there's no blood, there's no nothing, and it's just like, oh yep, he's dead. Okay, put him in the garbage bag. Okay, he's out. And like it's like there's no thought involved in it, and it's just nothing to him.
It's so deadpan and so as a matter of fact that I mean, it takes about half the movie to realize that I'm following three sociopaths running around the city doing all this shit.
Yeah, the other part that amused me of the whole thing, when they actually get like, okay, so if he sells some wine, they can make some money. If she goes to the bank, and all that kind of stuff. And then they open up like the wine cupboard, like at the end or somewhere in the middle. And I'm like, okay, he has like 50 bottles of wine there. They could just go buy the down payment for the restaurant and that. But it's like, nope, they won't. Like, it doesn't ever even really come up other than, oh, well, I'll take out like 6 and that. And everything. So I'm just kind of like, it to me, it's another thing of that whole consumerism. No, this I have the stuff I want. I don't want to give stuff up. I want things. I'm gonna step on anyone to get it, and that, and everything. And I can as long as I can justify it, it's cool.
Now, I'm curious from your perspective, because I mean, in what you do as a film festival programmer is what I do as a podcast host and a film critic. We're watching stuff constantly. And I mean, it's not necessarily stuff we always want to watch, but we're watching stuff constantly. Mm-hmm. But this happens to people outside of the industry as well. I'm kind of curious, why do things fall through the cracks generally? Do you think it's hours in the day? Is it education? Like, why do you think a movie like this, which on one end, I can understand why people may not want to watch it, but if you have sort of the right sensibilities and maybe you sort of grew up with that sort of 80s style of comedy, like this is something you have to see, because I mean, in reality, when you think about something like Eating Raoul, it is not that far removed from something like Fletch or anything else with Chevy Chase or something with Bill Murray, that kind of thing. And it feels a shame that something like this falls through the cracks. Like, from your perspective, why do you think we all have these cracks in our viewing?
because truthfully, there's just too much stuff to watch.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion. Like I do also think that the for when I was actually like I just turned 50 this year. This would have been 82, so I would have been 11. And that this is not
I
crossing my
was
path.
5, so yeah.
Yeah, this is not crossing my path. Most of the stuff from Roger Corman didn't cross my path. Like and that. And even still, like, and then as I'm going along, I've always been going to movies. I've always been doing that, but it's always the new stuff and that. And that's where if someone tells me that, oh, hey, go watch this, that's when okay, then I go watch it, and that, and everything. Like I was actually thinking, like I am trying to remember. I think I'm 99% sure I've seen Death Race 2000. I don't remember much about it and that other than like what it's about. And I remember a couple of the scenes of driving through patients and stuff like that. But it's the same type thing. It's just like, oh yeah, it's not on your radar unless someone puts it on your radar, or if you're someone who's going to spend a ton of time focusing and trying to track down old stuff and going through the history. I'm one of those film fans, and I'm like, I love movies. I love going to movies. I love going out with people to see the movies, and that. But it's always the new stuff.
Yeah.
Unless someone is like, oh hey, like, and you're lucky you're in Toronto, so you're gonna have retro stuff playing a lot. We're in Saskatoon, it's like 250,000 people. We have a few theaters. We had for a while, we had one guy who was doing like a bunch of old, like he'd do 35mm prints of all the cool old movies and that. And I bet you he might have eventually got the Eating Raoul, like who knows, and that. But it's just the type of thing where it just doesn't play here. So why would it ever cross your path and that, unless you start deep diving and that's when I do find like, so now one of the things I've been doing lately in my festivals is I want to start doing more retros. And that. So I'm starting to try to force myself to pay more attention, and I'm digging it. Like when I get like, it's like, oh shit, this would be so cool to play type thing. And that I would love to get in, play this for an audience, because I'm going to guess most people haven't seen it in Saskatoon, and that most in our crowd, and that. And it's weird because it is one of those names that's been around forever, and everyone's heard of it, I'm sure, but it's just unless someone puts it in front of you, 99% of people aren't going to watch it, and I think that's what it is.
No, and I mean you're right, and I mean it really brings up something that I tend to weigh with myself a lot of times too. I almost feel, as much as I would love to dive into, anything and everything new every single week, the Netflixes and the Primes of the world will just be bombarding us anyway. So it's just not physically possible. I mean, I personally almost feel more of a weight on my shoulders to try to go back and find something funky and weird and different, be it from North America or from overseas, for from as little as a few years ago, or from like in the 80s or earlier, like this film.
Well, and I'll admit it, I'm the type where when I do go back, I'm always, I'm like, I'm going back. Okay. I used to love Jackie Chan stuff. So I would like, it'd be like, and that was put in front of me at one point because we had a theater that was doing midnight movies and they had Drunken Master.
Yeah.
And that's when I did it. Truthfully, I don't think I've ever, and I'm sure it has played, I've never seen like Death Race 2000. So Paul Bartel never came across my path. The Eating Raoul definitely didn't, and that, like, I do remember scenes from the class struggle in Beverly Hills. I remember that, and everything. But that was like '89, so I probably watched it and it was like, okay, and it probably right over my head and never thought any more about who it was and stuff like that. So I do find now. And I'm also someone who I gave up collecting movies because it's too pricey.
Right.
and I can't do that. So now I'm relying on people to point me at things, stuff like this Criterion Challenge. This is why I'm doing that, because I'm like, yeah, what? And the Criterion Challenge is on Letterboxd. They don't say you have to watch stuff you haven't seen, but it's like, yeah, of course I'm going to pick stuff I haven't seen. Why would I pick the stuff I have seen? And that. So I'm using things like that to try to force myself, and that. And so, yeah, like I am now, I'm like, along with this, I did also watch Man with the X-Ray Eyes, the Roger Corman flick. I'd never seen that one before. I don't think I've seen much of Roger Corman. I also had this opinion of Roger Corman that it's all just going to be the kind of 60, yeah, and okay, look at all the big boob women running around, and that, and it's not. I don't think, like, so I'm like, like, so I think you get in your head also those ideas of what stuff is. I was convinced going in, oh, this is just a straight up cannibalism movie, and it's going to be a comedy and so I'm right on the comedy, but I'm like, no, there's a lot more to this than just, oh, it's a cannibalism movie, because that isn't even really the whole point of the movie. Like, it's hardly in there at all. It's all the other stuff. So yeah, I do think like it's so easy to oversight things and just not get dragged in, not unless someone tells you, and that's where I love what you're doing, and that with this lineup of like podcasts and stuff you're doing.
No, and I mean, it's again, it's one of those things where, I mean, obviously everyone talks and extols about how we live in such a golden age of television and scripted television and all that kind of stuff, which, and I mean, which to a degree is true because there's so much great stuff out there. It does feel like TV has been made more disposable, and sort of the holy grails of TV are already sort of well known. Whereas when it comes to film, there's still so much fertile ground to still be digging in. Does that make any sense?
I think so. For me, I have trouble with TV because it's the time commitment.
Right.
And there's stuff I so want to watch, and I'm just like, yeah. And then if I don't get around to watching it, I never get around to it. Where movies, I will eventually. I am still looking forward to when I retire. Like,
Right.
that's what I'm waiting for. I think, and that my goal this year, and I've already messed myself over by doing a couple things. I was actually trying to aim for 500 movies that I hadn't seen
Okay.
through the year. That kind of got changed because I'm helping out another film festival now. We're doing a new film festival coming up in June, and I have my regular film festival in November. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna like. I'll see a ton of movies, but I'm not
Right.
gonna like. I'll be really happy when I get through the 52 for the Criterion Challenge, and that because I'm gonna be so focused on all the new stuff. But yeah, like one of the things I am also doing on this kind of stuff is that whole encouragement of the retro.
Right.
So I have no idea if my programming team is even going to let me do it, but I'm looking at, oh, I picked a country and I want to do that as a retro if we do Dark Bridges in June. And I'm like, I want 3 movies. So I just made a list of like 25 like movies from this one country that either I've seen and I know are good or haven't seen. And I'm like, yep, cool. I'm going to go have fun. So now I'm going to work through all those and that. So,
And you know, it really does feel like retrospective programming, especially from an exhibition, like an exhibitor standpoint, be it film festivals or movie theaters or whatnot, is going to become more and more important. Because, I mean, especially nowadays, given what the streamers are doing with some of their theatrical releases, it feels like we're almost going back to the roadshow days,
yeah.
where it's like, okay, this is playing for 2 weeks, then it goes away.
Well, I think last time I was on, I think we talked about that whole curation aspect and everything, and I think that's where everything is really going. It is interesting. I find some retro, like, so there's this level of retro where I'm like, okay, the country I'm doing, if we play this one director, we'll get people out.
Yeah.
Everyone's seen their movies. Why would we do that? And that other than to get a crowd.
Yeah.
I want to put things like new stuff in, and that, like, so like I want to put, not that we're doing it, but I want to put Eating Raoul up, and that, like, yeah, people maybe heard about it, and that the name is compelling and it should get people up, but it's something 99% of them haven't actually looked at.
No, for sure.
And everything. So yeah, I like the whole retro, the whole trying, like, this is what film festivals should be. This is what the art house theaters, all those types of theaters should be, showing all the stuff that's been cool plus all the stuff that is cool now and merging them all together. I would kill for like a Cinematheque in Saskatoon,
Yeah,
where they actually did stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, look at here's all the old stuff, plus here's some of the important new stuff that's impacted by the old stuff, and playing them out. Like, it'd be fun to do a whole retro on like swingers, or do a whole retro on cannibalism, or even like go, hey, let's do capitalism, let's do consumerism,
yeah, totally,
yeah, and that and everything. It's just whether or not you can get a crowd out at that. And I think people should watch this. They should check it out. It's cool. It's so much fun. It's so dark in a fun way, and everything.
And I mean, It's one of those things, like, I mean, as much as you and I are talking about and throwing names like Paul Bartel and Mary Warnov, who people may not have heard of, there are some comedy luminaries in this film that are not playing very nice people. Ed Begley Jr. is in this film. Buck Henry is in this film.
Yeah, Edie McClurg.
Edie McClurg is in this film.
Hamilton Cap, the guy who comes to buy the wine.
That's now, right.
He's just basically a thief. So like, okay, he's not raping anyone. He's not like, and that like so, but there's some like really great legends in this thing. I think it's because they were all tied with Corman,
right?
And that, or from what I heard, like Mary Warnoff, she was from Andy Warhol. And that whole, the New York side of things. So I'm wondering how many of them came in through that. And everything. Even Richard Paul from he's the liquor store owner at the beginning.
That's right. Yeah.
Who's the guy and stuff. So like the cast is cool. It feels big in that because of the cast. It feels like the story is like big story, but it is also just like thinking about it. The whole movie also really it's neat. I don't know if you looked into it, like when they were shooting all the stuff that happened and everything. So they had a partial script. They started writing script. He brought in another writer to help out. He actually did some co-directing too. I'm trying to remember who his name is. I can't remember right now. But they didn't have money to make the movie. So they ended up shooting on the ends of reels.
Right.
And that, so each scene was filmed once and that was it, and everything, and it was all different film stocks and that, and like it all comes together really nice and everything. It all works out. I think it's just all the people involved in this do have those chops, and so they can just play it off each other. They're just naturalistic when they're acting together, and it just like I really dug this. Like I'm really happy I put it on my Criterion list. I'm really happy you got me to watch it early before a bunch of the other ones.
But independent cinema in the 80s, man, people, it's not hard drive space. It's called, scrounging for film stock and, leftover, runoff from reels. It's back in the day filmmaking, boys and girls.
Yeah.
Now, and I mean, something I got to ask, and this is something I've always been curious about, because I mean, you and I both know we live in a day and age where the word classic gets thrown around a bit too much. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective, what makes a film classic?
Oh my God. To me, it's the timelessness of it. In that it's something that you can watch and you will take something away that still has an impact now. There are movies which when you watch at the time are really cool and that, but then by the time you see them in like 20 years down the line, they were okay, it was an okay watch, but it's not something where it's like, oh man, this has an impact on me. This is something that like I'm going to be thinking about for days after. And that it might have had that impact on you the first watch, things like that. There's movies I've definitely watched where I loved, and then like I watch it later, I'm like, oh my God, why did I like that thing even? And that. So to me, it is it does come down to, in most cases, it's who's in it and how well they do it.
Right.
And that, and then the story, and can the story carry on and be something that still is meaningful later in that. Like I think all the classic movies, there's still something you can pull out that applies in that, whether it's just like I'm trying to say on this one, like this one, so it's so in your face, like the capitalism, the consumerism and that and everything, like the whole prudish nature, that kind of, okay, well that's kind of, I don't know if that's gone or not, like it's still there with a lot of people in that, but that versus the overt sexuality and everything, and like it is something where you look at it, it's like, okay, hey, this is the same thing as right now we're dealing, not exactly the same way, but it's the same type of thing where it's like, oh, you have left and right, you have those, like it's the whole, you have two different sides, and in this case, in this movie, they take it to such a far extreme, and that's what's happening in real life.
Yeah.
So like you can draw on these things, and that to me is what makes a classic, where I'm like, you're watching it again later, I'm like, oh yeah, like, okay, this is having an impact. I'm thinking about stuff that it's telling me about now, and that even though it was from, like, well, not this case, but it was from the 50s or the 40s or wherever, and that, like something like I'm dying to go back. I just watched the new Del Toro movie and that, so I'm dying to go back and watch the original and that Nightmare Alley.
They're different. They're different movies, but I've heard
they're
both worthwhile experiences for sure.
but it's that type of thing. Like going back, I want to now go back and see that one to see like, okay, what was that one about, and does the theme still carry on, and how much did Del Toro tweak the themes and things like that. I'd be curious if someone tried to do this now, what would it be about? Like if they took Eating Raoul, because racism is still there, consumerism is still there, like all this stuff is still there. Would you twist the story and not have it be about like, okay, we dump the swingers, we dump the prudish stuff, but we focus on the money, we focus on all that side of things and stuff. And okay, well, could you take it, like it'd be cool, take it in, could it be a left right politics thing, could it be like something along those lines, and I could see someone doing that and making that movie where it's like, oh, and the like thing, stuff like the Hunt that came out a little while ago, and stuff, and taking politics and putting it at, and that's the same type of thing as this is. It's just what are some themes and taking it to extreme.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's almost a mishmash of Dexter, The Hunt, and a few other really sort of weird things that they're combining together on this. Now, I mean, I guess just to start putting a bow on this, we are officially 40 years removed from Eating Raoul.
Oh God.
is by your definition, is this a classic film?
I think so. Yeah, I do. I think it's something that like it's, well, okay, truthfully, I think 99.9% of whatever Criterion puts out is going to be should be considered something you should watch.
Yes.
And a classic movie is something you should watch. It definitely won't be for everyone. So it's that type of movie where like, okay, if this isn't for you, then hey, like if I tried to get my mother-in-law to watch this, she would be like mad at me for a year in that. But like anyone who is into a little bit of challenging films, who is into the dark side of things, who likes their comedy black,
a little subversive and a little
subversive and that. Oh yeah, and the characters, the interaction between them, everything about it is so good. And that like you should hate these characters, but you love them all. In that, at least the main ones. And that. Some of the other guys are like, oh man.
No, you're right though. I mean, it's three miserable sociopaths, but we get sort of sucked into this world and almost rooting for them by the end of it all. It's such a crazy dynamic.
Yeah, and if they had gone with the blood, like I think Paul Bartel's right. If they had made it bloody, if they'd done all this other stuff, I don't think you would have liked them.
Yeah.
But because it is, oh, he hit him with the frying pan and there's the Bugs Bunny ding sound. Like, okay, I can go along with this and have fun. And
I mean, it makes me sad that we almost got a sequel too.
Oh, did they? I didn't know that.
They had one ready to go, but like 10 days before they were ready to start, Vestron pulled the money.
Oh, wow. Does anyone know what it's actually? Is it? I guess it's at the restaurant.
Yes, it's at the restaurant. It's years later at the restaurant, and they pick a feud with like the governor of California because they won't let him cut in line, and he sends the health inspector to shut him down, and then there's like hilarity ensues from there.
Nice. Yeah, and I can kind of predict where it goes.
Exactly. Yeah. No, now, I mean, obviously, John, I just want to say thank you so much for the time today, because I mean, you and I are both busy guys and we're both watching stuff. And I mean, you are one of the main programmers over at the Saskatoon Fantastic Fest. Is that, if I'm getting that right?
So we're Saskatoon Fantastic Film Festival. Now we used to be Dark Bridges.
But now Dark Bridges is coming back.
Yeah, and like we haven't made an official announcement of like if it does well in coming up in June, and we're not tied to June, but if it does well, we're going to have a horror fest every year if it does well. And that, so I'll be running 2 film festivals and that a year, and that, which is insane, but it's also going to be fun, and we're looking forward to, because we've heard a ton of people saying how much they miss the horror stuff, and we never left the horror stuff, but there's this perspective that we have, so we want to, let's have a short thing, let's blast a whole bunch of horror into people and have a lot of fun.
And you know what, it's a great thing to hear, because like you said, you are in a city of 250,000 people. I'm sure there's one Cineplex down the road somewhere, and that's about it, but I'm glad there's a demand for subversive and weird shit out there in the world, because you know, guys like you and I need to sort of wave that flag as often as we possibly can.
100%. I would hate to program Cineplex. It would be pretty boring after a while.
Would be.
Yeah.
All right, well, John, thanks again for the time today, man. This was fun, and well, just keep watching movies, everybody, because I know that's what John and I are about to do when we get off this call. So
thanks a lot.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.